In Buddhist philosophy, the concept of the ego refers to the illusion of a personal, separate self, a mental construct that makes us feel distinct from others and the world. The ego is a habitual way of thinking that defines me and mine through thoughts, emotions, memories, and beliefs. While it gives us a sense of identity, Buddhism teaches that this self-centered view is not an ultimate reality. It's like a story the mind continuously tells itself, creating the illusion of a stable, independent self that needs to be protected, validated, or enhanced. This illusion lies at the root of human suffering. The ego constantly labels experiences as mine, my thoughts, my feelings, my achievements, my failures, attaching meaning to them and treating them as essential parts of our identity. For example, when we think, "I am angry," or "I am successful," we believe these fleeting emotions or situations define who we are. The ego also likes to compare, "I am better than them," or "they are more accomplished than me," generating feelings of pride or inadequacy. It seeks validation through praise and recognition, while fearing criticism, failure, and rejection. This identification with thoughts and roles leads us to cling to pleasurable experiences and avoid painful ones. We become dependent on external circumstances, such as relationships, possessions, or achievements, for our sense of well-being. However, since all things are impermanent, clinging to them inevitably results in suffering. When things don't go as the ego expects, we experience frustration, disappointment, or fear, believing that the self is somehow damaged or threatened. The first way the ego operates is through self-identification. We develop a sense of self based on our experiences, memories, and social interactions. This identification can lead to an inflated ego when we perceive ourselves in a positive light, or a deflated one when we encounter setbacks. For instance, someone may define themselves primarily by their career achievements, feeling empowered when they receive accolades, but devastated by a demotion. This dependence on external validation keeps the ego constantly on edge. The ego thrives on comparison and competition. It compels us to measure ourselves against others, leading to feelings of jealousy, inadequacy, or superiority. This comparison can create a false sense of hierarchy. "I am better than them," or "they are more successful than I am." Such thoughts can trigger negative emotions, affecting relationships and personal peace. The ego seeks to reinforce its position by creating divisions, fostering conflict and resentment rather than connection and understanding. The ego is driven by desire and aversion, manifesting as a craving for pleasurable experiences and an avoidance of pain or discomfort. This leads to a cycle of attachment, wanting things to remain the same and resisting change. When we desire something, the ego becomes fixated on obtaining it, believing it will bring happiness. Conversely, when faced with unpleasant situations, the ego reacts defensively, wanting to push them away. This dualistic approach keeps us trapped in a constant state of longing and fear, perpetuating a sense of dissatisfaction. Buddhism teaches the doctrine of anatta, or non-self, which points to the fact that there is no permanent, unchanging essence behind our sense of self. What we experience as self is actually a flow of interconnected processes, thoughts, emotions, sensations, and perceptions that are constantly arising and passing away. The mind constructs the idea of I by stringing these experiences together, but in reality, there is no enduring entity beneath them. A classic analogy in Buddhism compares the self to a river. While the river seems like a single thing, it is constantly changing, with new water flowing in every moment. In the same way, what we call me is a continuous stream of mental and physical events that do not stay the same. The problem arises when we mistake this stream for a fixed identity and attempt to hold on to it, creating attachment, resistance, and suffering. The ego-driven mind creates a constant struggle. It seeks to control life by chasing desires, wealth, relationships, power, or status, while avoiding discomforts like failure, rejection, or loss. This makes the mind restless, always seeking the next thing to satisfy the ego's needs. However, even when desires are fulfilled, the satisfaction is often fleeting and new cravings arise. For example, achieving a personal goal may bring temporary happiness, but soon the ego demands more. What's next? Leading to an endless pursuit of fulfillment. Similarly, the ego fears losing what it has gained, generating anxiety about the future. This cycle of craving and fear keeps us trapped in a state of dissatisfaction, which Buddhists call dukkha, often translated as suffering or discontent. The ego also divides the world into me versus others, leading to comparisons, judgments, and conflict. If someone receives praise, the ego feels jealous. If someone criticizes us, the ego feels attacked. The ego interprets events as personal attacks or failures, leading to feelings of anger, sadness, or anxiety. For instance, if we receive criticism, the ego may react defensively, amplifying our emotional pain. This sense of separateness blinds us to the reality that all beings share similar challenges and that we are all deeply connected. By reinforcing a sense of separation from others, the ego can lead to feelings of loneliness and isolation. The belief that I am different can hinder genuine connection and compassion towards others. As long as we remain caught in this self-centered view, we experience isolation, frustration, and fear. Buddhist practices, particularly mindfulness meditation, aim to loosen the grip of the ego by teaching us to observe thoughts and emotions without identifying with them. Instead of thinking, "I am angry," mindfulness allows us to see, anger is present. This shift creates space between the experience and the sense of self, allowing us to see thoughts and emotions as temporary events rather than essential parts of who we are. Over time, mindfulness helps us see that thoughts arise and pass on their own, without needing to act on them or take them personally. For example, when a thought like, "I am not good enough," arises, we can observe it without believing it. This detachment from ego-based narratives reduces suffering and brings a sense of inner peace. Compassion is another key practice in dismantling the ego. When we develop empathy for others, we shift the focus away from me to recognize the shared human experience. This softens the ego's tendency to see others as competitors or threats. In practices like metta, loving kindness meditation, we generate wishes of happiness and well-being for ourselves, loved ones, and even those we dislike. Over time, this practice breaks down the walls of separation created by the ego and fosters a sense of connection with others. Compassion teaches us that just as we suffer from attachment, fear, and frustration, so do others. Recognizing this shared experience helps us respond with kindness rather than judgment, loosening the grip of self-centered thinking. Another way to dissolve the ego is by practicing non-attachment, the ability to engage with life fully without clinging to outcomes. Non-attachment doesn't mean indifference. Rather, it means appreciating experiences without trying to possess or control them. For example, we can enjoy a relationship without making it the sole source of our happiness. Similarly, we can pursue goals while remaining open to whatever outcome unfolds. When we understand that all things are impermanent, we become less dependent on external circumstances for happiness. Non-attachment allows us to live with equanimity, a balanced mind that remains calm and open, regardless of whether events unfold as the ego desires. The insight into emptiness, shunyata, is central to dismantling the ego. Emptiness refers to the understanding that all phenomena, including the self, are empty of inherent, independent existence. Everything exists only in relation to causes and conditions. The self, for example, is not a separate, fixed entity, but a collection of interconnected processes. thoughts, emotions, and experiences influenced by countless factors. When we realize the empty nature of the self, we stop taking the ego's demands so seriously. We no longer feel the need to defend or enhance an imaginary self, which brings a deep sense of freedom and peace. When the ego's grip loosens, life becomes less burdensome. We stop chasing things we think will complete us and begin to appreciate life as it is. Everyday experiences, like eating a meal, spending time with loved ones, or walking in nature, become sources of quiet joy. Without the constant need for validation or control, we live with freedom and ease. Letting go of the ego allows us to respond to life with openness and curiosity. We no longer judge experiences as good or bad, nor do we see others as obstacles or threats. This freedom from self-centered thinking enables us to engage with the world from a place of kindness and compassion. In Buddhism, the ego is seen as the source of much of our suffering because it creates a false sense of separation and attachment. By recognizing the illusion of self through mindfulness, compassion, non-attachment, and the understanding of emptiness, we begin to dismantle ego-based patterns. This journey leads to a profound inner transformation, one in which we are no longer bound by the demands of the ego and can engage with life from a place of peace, connection, and freedom. Thank you for joining me on this journey and being a part of it.